Good morning, everybody. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to do things a little different today, and it's just kind of throwing off my game because it's different. So give me just 1 quick second to set up, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what's different, and then we'll just jump in together. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. Here we go. Okay, I see the video. Looks like a couple people are already on. Awesome. This up. All right. Good morning, everybody. Hey, Miguel, somebody chime in and let me know that you can hear and see me. Obviously, you can see me because Miguel, you just wrote. But I'd love to know that that the audio is coming through also, because we gotta have the audio. Hey, Paul. Hey, Marcus. What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us from Japan. Must be, is it really late or really early there? I guess you guys would be later than us? I'm so bad with time zones, but I'm glad you can make it. Faj, probably won't be able to stay till the end. Okay, no worries. I'm gonna test out, this is one of the new things we're gonna do today. Ivan, thank you, I appreciate it. Paul, what's up? Thank you. Miguel, thank you. Okay, cool. So that's one of the new things I'm going to test out today, is a slightly new way of archiving this stuff. I think I still might keep it on the Facebook page. I have to play with my phone when it's finished, but it does give me the option to download this video to my phone, and to all the members of our private community, I'm going to try and upload it directly inside the underground so that we can start developing a library archive inside there of these open office hours. I know a couple of the members, I'm not talking to them right now because I know they're not watching. A couple of the members of that have subscribed to our private community are not on Facebook, so it feels a little unfair that we're getting this free resource that they don't have access to. So I've been trying to figure out a way to make sure that they can access it. So they can't watch it live, but they're still going to watch it. So that's one new thing today. The other new thing is that I am totally and completely not warmed up yet. I haven't touched the guitar. In fact, I intentionally didn't even turn the amp on or tune the guitar yet, because I want you guys to watch me from minute 1 up to about an hour in. Basically, what I want to do is I want to give you a little quick preview, sneak peek inside how I get warmed up in practice. So I know I push the individual tonalities on you guys a lot. I call them the fully extended tonalities, even though they don't extend all the way up to the 13th. I don't refer to something, obviously a 13th chord is a fully extended chord, harmonically speaking, but when I talk about a fully extended chord, what I'm talking about is we have that piano player idea of the shell voicing and the melodic triad. So it's fully extended, meaning that it has everything. It's not just a 1-3-5 or a 1-3-5-7. It's not just a triad. It extends throughout all of the harmonic and melodic structures of that particular tonality. I hope that makes sense. I know I push you guys to learn those things and to work on them. So today, I'm just going to show you how I would sort of start working on it. I'm not really 100% sure how far it's going to get into my process. I can tell you it's not going to look at every element of my process, because I'll work on these things for weeks or months, or I'll come back to them a couple years later, and if I find a new way of working on something, I'll come back and keep working on it. So that's going to be a little different today. Obviously, we are going to go over some of the elements of the study material. So if you have questions about anything, you can let me know. But a lot of this is going to just be kind of me playing a little bit, talking a little bit, showing some steps I take. This is similar to the bonus lesson that the private community gets, but it's just going to be a little different at the same time. We'll jump in a minute and you'll see. Let me check in and see what everybody's talking about here. There's a lot of comments. 12:30 a.m. Tokyo. Woo, man, appreciate the late night hang. Gonna try and make it worth your while. Paolo, 6 hours later. Cool, yeah, I love the whole international vibe here. Adelmo, what's up, man? Looking forward to seeing you soon. John, it's good to see you on here. Sean, it's good to see you on here. We had a great Skype lesson the other day. All right, let's jump in. So, I guess first things first, let me just make sure I'm in tune, because like I said, I just kind of intentionally didn't tune or even turn my amp on. I wanted you guys to see me from split second one, which means I'm totally unwarmed up and feeling a little vulnerable, broadcasting live all around the world. But I want to give you guys like a realistic view. This isn't just some, YouTube video of somebody who shedded for 2 hours and then recorded an hour worth of material and edited it down to 5 minutes. Like, I want you to, to understand sort of what the process looks like, because in many ways that's what melodic triads is, or are. Melodic triads is kind of like a system or a method, so even though it sounds plural, it actually, I sometimes think of it as like a singular thing. Melodic triads are nouns, like they are, triads and quadratonics that we can think about and talk about and notate and practice and even improvise music with. But it's also very much a verb, right? It's a process, it's a method, it's a philosophy and an idea of tension resolution and the importance of triads. But really it's about taking those triads, learning to view them as very stable structures, and then learning to develop a method around using them to open our ears, to train our ears, to find new sounds on the fretboard. I hope that makes sense. So let's just jump in. This is literally minute one. I'm turning my amp on right now. So this is you guys, you're up in the morning, you're hanging out, you're home from work. Like, this is what something might look like. Hey, what's up, Wayne? So glad you could make it. Hope Charlotte weather's not too hot and humid these days. So I have my sustain pedal. It's a Game Changer Audio, that's the company, and it's called the Plus. It's kind of like a digital version of a piano sustain pedal. But the reason that I always write these fully extended tonality studies out in E, or not necessarily in E, but like over an E chord, is because I don't want you to feel like you can't do this because you don't have a sustain pedal. We always have our open sixth string, right? That's actually how I started working on this stuff and why I got into the habit of always doing it in E, because when I started this, I didn't have a sustain pedal. Ronan, it's good to see you. Thanks for hanging with us. So you can do it with that. If you have a looping pedal, that's cool too. So generally when I'm working on this stuff, I like to pick a fully extended tonality that I'm gonna look at, and I like to just be very disciplined about it, okay? So this month we're looking at the minor major 9. So I'm gonna start in the key of E because that's how we always start things in our study guides. But hopefully before this hour's over, you'll see me venture away from E a little bit. One quick thing before we get started, now that a few people are on here, huge thank you to everybody in the private community. I love having you guys. I love being able to bounce ideas off you guys and get input. I appreciate everyone who's emailed me back about next month's study guide, giving me their thoughts and input on that. It's been really helpful. And so thank you to you guys. Thank you to everybody who contributes to help me continue being able to make sure I can keep the free stuff going, the sort of NPR style, PBS, NPR, fund drive or whatever. Really appreciate all you guys, and really appreciate everybody who just hangs in the group and is watching this right now. All right, so minor major 9. So the very first thing I like to do is just get started by tuning my ears in with the sound of whatever particular fully extended tonality I'm working on. And the way we do that, the way I like to start doing that, is the fully extended voicings. So the voicings where I'm trying my best to recreate the vibe of a piano, right? That's really where all this stuff came from. It came from me hanging out with a pianist, vibraphonist really, but we sat at the piano and talked about piano ideas a lot, and I practiced them at the keyboard and at the piano. And it came from this, ongoing, ever since I sort of heard Bill Evans, this sort of obsession with like, why is piano allowed to get away with so much amazing stuff and guitar is so much harder? Like, why do we have people like Bill Evans on the piano and Keith Jarrett, and on guitar, you know, there are some great guitar players, but the general pedagogy and the general not vocabulary, the conversation is usually about, you know, drop 2 chords. And I just never really quite felt comfortable seeing the connection from the drop 2 to the, you know, the Brad Meldau kind of style of piano playing, and Bill Evans and the whole lineage, that tradition. There seemed to be something different that they were thinking about. And I was very fortunate to meet this guy, Stefan Harris, this vibraphonist who got us at the piano and started showing how simple those types of piano sounds can be when we approach them from the standpoint of triads. Everything I do and talk about, I shouldn't say everything, a lot of the stuff I do and talk about was really stuff I dreamed up that was like me asking myself, okay, how do I get this off the piano? I can see it at the piano now. How do I get it off the piano and translate it into something that's a fretboard, right, where we only have our left hand, sometimes only 4 fingers. So the fully extended, fully voiced, like 6-note chords was sort of the first thing I came up with. It was this idea of, okay, the piano has a left hand and a right hand, and they play a shell voicing in their left hand and a triad in their right hand. If you've never tried this before, try and find a keyboard and do it. Take any of the fully extended chords that we do, the tonalities, and play the shell voicing in your left hand and the triad in your right hand, and it is just magnificent. It's so beautiful, but simple, right? It's just a 3-note shell and a 3-note triad, and the way they come together is amazing. So Vaj, a musician, once said that it's not the instruments that have limits, but the humans. Yeah, so I used to be stuck in the mindset before I started all this that it's not fair, that guitar, it's too hard, we don't get 2 hands, we have 5 different places to play middle C, it's impossible to learn to read, I can't play this, you know, all of that stuff is more or less true. It's not that any of it's not true, but here's the shift that took place for me, is that I realized that not a single second of my complaining ever made me a better guitar player, right? There's no amount of complaining, no matter how true it is, that will make me better at guitar, nor will it make me better at piano or any other instrument, right? It's just an intellectual experiment in self-pity, and it's useless, like legit useless. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it's worse than useless because it wastes your time and it puts you in a negative mindset. The better mindset is, okay, we have these issues, now what are we gonna do about it? Like, let's make a choice and let's find a way. So that's basically what Melodic Triads is for me, was my final battle of saying, I'm done being stuck in that mindset, what am I gonna do about it? Like, how creative can I get here? So the first idea I came up with was, let's take the left hand, right hand concept of piano and let's just stick it on the fretboard. Let's just put the left hand on the bottom 3 strings and the right hand on the top 3 strings. Right, the voicings, the 3 inversions that I show you guys every month, I do use them sometimes, but not all the time. But it's as much about knowing the voicing as it is about just understanding this concept of piano player construction, of 2-hand construction. We have a shell voicing and we have a chord, a triad, I'm sorry. If we can put it on the fretboard and wrap our mind around why it looks like that on the fretboard, it helps all the other elements of harmonic and melodic creation. So here was the first voicing I gave you. Adelmo, what's up, man? So I'm not really sure a better way to explain it in terms of the piano. I'll tell you what, because I feel like this conversation could go really long and I don't want to take too much time away from this. So shoot me an email or in our next Skype lesson we can talk about it. I think you might possibly be overcomplicating it in your mind. It's a really simple idea of piano players 2 hands and they get to use both at the same time and we don't. So let's talk more in depth about your question, because I want to make sure it's not something you're confused on, but I don't want to spend too much of this open office hours on philosophy and concept. I want to dig in and show you guys how I practice. Hey, what's up, Thomas? Thank you for joining in. Okay, so here are the 3 inversions of our fully extended tonality. So here's the first one. The concept is that we're putting an E minor major shell on the bottom 3 strings, which if you're newer at jazz and you're not sure what that means it's a shell voicing is a 3-note voicing that has the 1, the 3, and the 7, usually. There's some variations on that. But this is like the most important one, the 1, 3, 7. And for a minor major 7 chord, that would be a root, a minor third, and a major 7, okay? That enough is enough to give us the sound of this basic chord, right? We can hear that sort of James Bond vibe here already. Now the idea is, how do we make that happen and get the triad, the right hand of the piano player, and get the triad on the top 3 strings of the guitar at the same time? That's what piano players are able to do very easily. Sometimes we have to be a little creative with this, okay? If you are advanced enough, you might be able to look at my voicing and say, well, Jordan, hold on, you're not playing what you said you want to play, right? There's the B major triad. That's not a shell voicing. This is not the 1, 3, and 7. This is the 1, 5, and minor third. That's the E, B, perfect 5th, and G. It's just an E minor, okay? Yes, that's true. I don't know how many of you guys have met Ben Monder in person. He's got huge hands. I don't. I have relatively small hands. So it might be possible for some people, for some of you guys, to play this. This is the real voicing. This would be starting on the 5th string and moving towards the floor. This is 6th fret, 5th fret, 4th, 2nd. See, I already messed it up. It's possible, but very uncomfortable for me. But that has the 7 and the 3rd and the triad. So I did create a variation here. I cheated a little. Faj, this comes back to your point. Like, do I want to sort of limit myself realistically, like in terms of what I might play, or do I want to be a little playful with the concept here? So the concept is a triad over the shell voicing, but I can manipulate the shell voicing. We all can if we need to. That still has the same vibe to me. All I did was I dropped the 7 down to the 5th in the shell. But look, in the B major triad, we already have the 7th of the E minor major 7, right? It has the D sharp in it. So I'm actually not losing any necessary notes. Okay? So it's a philosophical idea, concepts that we're trying to learn, plus we're opening our ears. Again, this one I kind of cheated. I can't reach. Some of you guys might be able to make this happen. It's just not going to work for me. So I always prioritize the triad, because that's really where all the color and the tonal texture comes from. And then my goal is, how do I get the best notes from the shell voicing down in the lower 3 strings? So here's my root, minor 3rd, 5th again. So it's basically the same as this, but I inverted the quote-unquote shell voicing. And then the last one, here's the B triad. And I put the natural 6th of the chord in the shell voicing this time, in the left hand, the piano player. And I sort of posed the question to you guys, like, why do you think that I did that or could do that? The main reason that I did that is just because there were no other notes that I physically could reach on the guitar. With the guitar, we just have to get a little creative. So the reason I used the 6th is literally there's no other notes that I could physically get to. Maybe you guys have different finger lengths. The 6th and the major 7 are sort of like fraternal twins, okay? When people talk about C6 chords versus C major 7 chords, they can be interchangeable. So the note, the function of the note, the natural 6th, is very, very, very related to the major 7. They're both used to create the sense of a tonic chord, okay? So I threw it in there because I know that it can work, even though it's not sort of perfect. But it's just there, and I think it sounds totally fine. right? I don't think most people would hear that and say, wait a minute, that's not a minor major 9, that's a minor major 9 with a natural 6 in it. Like, it's just there, okay? If we could skip it and just mute that string, it may sound almost identical. Okay, so very first thing I do is I just like to find my voicings. You don't have to use mine exactly, like I showed you just now. They're not perfect to the philosophical concept of putting the triad over the shell. Sometimes I have to get a little creative, and you might find things that that are different from what I might find. So the first thing I do is I exercise that thought process of prioritizing the triad on top, the shell on bottom, and part of it is to really get that understanding in my mind, because again, the piano players have 2 hands and we don't, so we really have to reinforce this like way of thinking. It's a way of prioritizing things. So it helps me with that, and it just helps me open my ears to the sound. Because everything I do for the rest of my practice session when I'm working on this should fit in with this vibe. Okay, that's just an octave of the first one. So that's the very, very, very first thing I'll do. Then I ask myself, okay, do I know how to actually play this B major triad or whatever the melodic triad is? Do I actually know how to play it on the fretboard? Which might seem like a silly question for me to ask myself since I'm always talking about triads, but sometimes, you know, there are fancy triads that we haven't talked about yet. It's not just major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Even if you have those 4, there are other types of triads. So sometimes I'll spend a few minutes just running through. I like to break them down into positions. I really only see 3 positions on the fretboard, but each of my positions, sometimes I would even argue that I really only see 2 positions, but let's stick with 3 because there's 3 notes the triad can start on. So here's one position, because it starts on the 5th of the chord, the 2nd fret, F sharp. Here's another position, starts on the root. And then here's another position. Sometimes I argue that this isn't a real position, it's an extension of something else, but it starts on the 3rd, so let's say it's a position. Okay. Each one of those sort of has like satellite notes that aren't physically in the exact position I just played, but that I view as sort of an extension of it. Like a little moon revolving around it, you know, like we could play that 3rd right there. So sometimes I mess around with, especially non-traditional triads, like a sus2 triad where there's no 3rd. It's 1, 2, 5. For like very modern, even as far back as like Coltrane to Love Supreme, we get a lot of sus2 triads. It's an amazing sound. One that I'm still struggling with and constantly battling to try and get in my fingers. Okay, so that's the very first thing. Then I like to use my sustain pedal. If you don't have one, again, you can still use the open 6th string. That's why I love doing everything in this key. So I'm going to go and use this sustain pedal. If you have a looping pedal, works too. And I'm actually going to play the full shell voicing, not just the root note. So that you can't do unless you have a sustain or looping pedal. So here's my shell voicing. This is the 1 flat 3 major 7. Okay, and then I'm just gonna get used to the sound of the B major triad against this. right? We want them to be fully accepted into the triad so that none of them should feel like unstable or like they have to move. If they do, what that means is that you need to really open your ear and accept this. These should be very colorful, yes, but stable and consonant. We shouldn't really hear any dissonance or any tension. Right, and we should be able to hear the root note of the triad B as the melodic root note, the melodic do, I call it. Seems like too simple, too childish, but really this is that concrete foundation that everything else sits upon. Because now I'm going to add the flat 6, the tension flat 6. And we should hopefully be able to hear that note as a melodic tension note that wants to resolve back down to the 5th of the triad. As our melodic do. Right? That should sound like the end of a song, but that should weird us all out a little bit because I'm playing a B note, but my sustain pedal is holding down an E minor major 9. Okay? Again, that's a B note. Somebody, or preferably everybody, chime in and let me know, do you hear that note, that tension note, wanting to resolve down? And do you hear B as the strongest resolution note that we're hearing? Because that's kind of like the most important thing here. We're really talking about ear at this point. Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you on here. Thanks for joining us. I'm kind of baby stepping everybody through the way that I practice things. So at this point, we're mainly doing listening and ear stuff, okay? Yes, we could take the quadratonic, the B triad tension flat 6, and turn that into like a physical practice. Like we now have a scale at this point. If you can't do this, notice that I can keep this going while I'm talking to you guys. Watch, I'm gonna mess up now that I said that. If you can't do this, this kind of has to happen before you can really focus on the ears. But it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, we can have one octave of the B triad. Right? I just played literally 4 notes, less than an octave. All of these are within a minor 6th of each other. Our ear, and that's enough to play music with. I mean, we can really make something pretty with that. Marcus, you've probably answered this a million times, but what kind of guitar is that? It's a Heritage Academy Custom. It's a tiny little thin body, thin line, semi-hollow. Great guitar, I love this thing. So I personally spend a lot of time just doing this type of stuff, okay? At this point, we really do have a scale. Faj and Miguel are saying they love scales. All 4 of these notes, let me reiterate, let me change the way I was about to say that, reword that. These 4 notes, this quadratonic, B triad, tension, flat 6, these 4 notes make up more than 50% of E melodic minor. Right? Most people see E minor major 9 and their first thought process is that sort of chord scale theory idea is like, okay, E melodic minor. And it's not wrong. I'm going to show you why I disagree with it and why it's a very deceptive, subtle, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's a little dangerous to think that way, but that thought process can be very limiting. I know a lot of people say that they find the quadratonic idea limiting. The idea behind the quadratonic isn't to forever stick us inside of 4 notes, it's to help us train our ears and hear tension resolution. But let me show you this. So these 4 notes make up 4 of the 7 notes of E melodic minor. So over 50% of the scale we are now exploring just with this triad and that one extra note. Right, now check this out. And it's enough to convey harmony and melody and tonality. Okay, now just as an experiment, because we're playing over an E minor major 9 chord, we're playing quote unquote an E melodic minor scale. If somebody were to transcribe what I just played without knowing sort of what I'm thinking about, they would likely categorize it and explain it to someone else as saying, oh, he's using the E melodic minor. E melodic minor, that scale, is built on an E note. That's the root note of the scale. That's the most stable note, right? But listen to what happens when we add an E note to this quadratonic. That was E up at the top. Okay, that note, it should hopefully, if your ear is good enough, you might be able to hear that that was the 4. That was like the sus4. Can you hear that? That's the E note. Actually very unstable in this tonal situation, which is something that's difficult to understand and take advantage of if we jump straight for E melodic minor. So yes, scales are great and I love scales, but let's use our ear and understand what's really happening inside of them. B, the 5th of the scale, is actually functioning as the most stable resolution point, which is weird. Why is that? I don't know. The only answer I can come up with is because this piano voicing has a B major triad in the top of the structure, right? We would see it if we wrote the chord out on paper also. Now the E note that I just added was only to show a step in how I train my ear. This wasn't necessarily, it's not my favorite go-to note, because what does E really add color-wise? Like when it comes to quadratonics and specific tension notes, I like to really take advantage of the most beautiful, colorful notes we have. So the flat 6 is the first one, and if you've looked through the PDF, you'll note that the 2 is the second one, tension 2. So that's this sound. Here's the 2. That's always my starting point. I get the voicings down, and then I really try and get in with my ear and learn to hear these tension notes the way they feel against the triad. Okay? And there's only 9 possible tension notes, right? If we have a triad that's 3 notes, we only have 12 notes. So once you learn to listen and practice this way, after a couple months, you'll realize like you're just using the same colors and emotions and tensions. You might feel them differently than me, which is great. I hope you do. That's what makes it your improvisation versus mine. Okay, I'm gonna jump us in the next step in a minute, but I just want to touch base and see what people are talking about. Scales rule the world. I do hear the resolution, the melody, which is new to me, against E minor. My initial thought would have been resolution E. Yeah, Wayne, thank you for sharing that with us. I think you're in the majority. And in terms of theory, it's not wrong. And there are ways to use an E minor melodic triad which would create the resolution to E. But in this particular situation, we're not using the E triad. And if we use the E triad, then all of our resolution points are going to be different. That's not true. We would have B in the E minor triad also, so that would be a little different. But in this particular situation, the root of the chord and the minor third of the chord are both melodic tension notes, which is really weird, right? We generally say the root and the third are like go-to resolution points, and they can be, but not in this exact sound. Okay, we can change the melodic triad, that piano player, they can put a different triad there, but then the whole color, the whole tonality is just going to be different. And that's we should learn that one also, right? And then we can mix and match them if we want, but they're different colors. It's like red and blue for a painter. If we can't control them and have the ability to intentionally utilize them, then we're kind of just waffling around inside scales looking for something that sounds cool rather than knowing how to develop something that we already know is going to sound cool. All right. Marcus, definitely hear what you're saying. I guess we can categorize this as music refusing to be categorized. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little OCD about categorizing, so I don't know whether it's overly categorized or not categorized enough. Faj, also very strong in the upper harmonics of E. Yeah. Jim, hey, what's up? Thanks for hanging with us. Okay, so this is just sort of step one. This is, I guess, step two, because step one I said was the fully extended voicings. So the next thing I like to do is, and this is a little tough. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna throw one other thing in here. I set up a speaker. For some reason, my my Drum Genius app won't play from the phone while I'm in another app while I'm recording. So I found a samba drums only loop backing track on YouTube. Maybe I'll post this in the comments below. In fact, I think I can do that right now. So I like to try and get into playing like music, like real music, as quickly as possible. I'm not a big lover of, I just posted the link to the backing track. I wouldn't necessarily recommend leaving us right now to go play with it, but just so you guys can have it later. So I'm not a huge fan of play-alongs and backing tracks because they usually just don't groove at all, which is actually kind of harmful to our own ability to find groove and create groove. But there are like drum-only backing tracks. The Drum Genius app is great. It's got to feel good, right? The chords are important also, but like if I'm gonna play with something behind me, I want it to make me feel like a better player for it. So here's this. I'm gonna hit play on this, and then I'm gonna sustain my shell voicing, and then I'm gonna play a little bit. I'm not gonna jump straight for eighth notes or exercises or sequences, anything like that. Right at the beginning, I like to be very sort of like free and like water flowing over. what the 2 offers me and be able to, like, you know, enslave it to what I want. But at the same time, I understand what it wants, and I'm going to give it that resolution. Here's the tension flat 6. Sentence where I'm the subject, right? I like to play guitar, or I can talk about one of you. You like to play the guitar, right? We're talking about the same thing, but the subject is different. So I'm just using the tension 2 as the subject, or the tension 6. It's a game of finding a sense of comfort in the sound. But I always know where B is. Timing too, because that was the end of the track. So so I'll sit and do that a lot, and then if I can do that, I might change to a new key, and I'll do this kind of stuff in the new key. Then the next step that I like to do, and this is what I was going to talk about a minute ago, but I decided to do this filler step. Don't try this until you can absolutely do what I just did with the backing track. But the next thing I like to do is to sort of comp for myself and like play shorter and simpler phrases and comp with the basic shell voicing underneath it. Okay, so check this out. Same exact idea, but now I'm just going to use just basic 1, flat 3, major 7. Sounds the most resolved, even though I'm playing the shell voicing back and forth with. This is the left hand and the right hand of the piano player, right? The shell voicing the triad, but now they're kind of dancing back and forth with each other. Phrases are really that complicated or tricky, right? That's just 3, flat 6, 5, 3, 1. Now it's just flat 6, 5, 1. So I could sit for like hours and do stuff like that. Like I just love that sort of, it's kind of modal in a sense, but you know, we can also do this with dominant, like really like tense altered dominant chords. The idea is to learn how do we be playful inside of its sound, right? It's very difficult to play through a 2-5-1 or through a whole section of a tune or through a very challenging chord progression. Like if we're playing something modern, it's very challenging to do that, at least for me, if I don't understand where sort of the tension and resolution notes are inside of any one of those chords. So that's kind of what I'm trying to find here. I'm trying to find a comfort zone with seeing them on the fretboard and knowing what they're going to sound like and being able to just jump for it and make it happen. All right, Faj. Oh, you got to run. Okay, well, this will be posted maybe still here in the Facebook group, but definitely in the underground. So come back and watch the rest if you would like to. I'm gonna try. Oh, I didn't realize it's getting so late already. Miguel, thank you. Jim, I might have missed you saying this, but I like to delete for the most part the root and fourth of the melodic minor scale. Do you purposely ever do this, like the pentatonic shapes that result on the guitar? I very, very, very rarely think about it from that perspective of deleting notes. I tend to think more from like, okay, what does this particular tonality want? Like, what are what's the triad that's at the center of it, and then what are the most important notes to add around it? Now, here's what's so cool, is that the pentatonic scale that I'm playing, you found it your own way also, right? Because this is, if you think of it from another view, from the full scale deleting down to something smaller, this is an E melodic minor, missing the root and the fourth. We found the same thing. Why did we both find it? Probably just because it sounds fucking awesome. Like, there's no way around it. There are some of the greatest musicians on the planet that have ever existed. We're using all these same sounds also, and I can basically guarantee you that none of them used terms like quadratonics and melodic triads. Like, these are just words that some of them that my teacher Stefan came up with, some of them that I came up with, to try and understand and organize and categorize steps in this method, in this process. The reason they sound good is just because they sound good. Like, there's no way around it. That's what I love about the melodic triads approach, is that the question becomes very direct. Like, okay, what are the best sounding notes going to be? Like, we don't even need to transcribe to find this stuff, but I guarantee you, if you go and listen to somebody play Nika's Dream, you know, and it's not in E, but if you listen to that first, like, look at the very first melody note. It lands on the 9, right? I mean, that's an E minor major 9, and I think in the book it says it's an E minor major 7. I don't hear it that way. I hear it as an E minor major 9. When you put the melody on top, and the more you learn the relationship between melody and harmony, the more you'll understand why chords are named certain ways and why certain melodies work so well over some chords but not necessarily over others. Okay, so that's a really good big step in my own personal process, is that idea of first starting with just the ear, right, the fully voiced, fully extended chords, then seeing the triad on top of those, then learning to hear individual tension notes, flat 6, 2, then putting on some kind of, I like to use Drum Genius, and just playing sort of rubato, but still being aware of the rhythm. I'm not really concerned with rhythm at the beginning. I'm more concerned with ear and melody and fluidity. Then I'll let rhythm come into the picture in terms of my phrasing. And then at some point I like to start, because I grew up playing in guitar trios and I love playing solo music, then I like to try and bring that left hand of the piano player back in. So that's when the shell voicing comes in, okay? There are near infinite steps that I might take after this, okay? And we still have a few minutes, so maybe I'll talk about a couple of them. But this is really the sort of stepwise process that I personally take when I know, when I'm learning a new tonality or just want to brush up on an old one, and I want to get it to the point of making music. Okay, it's very easy to just get stuck in the theory and the concepts and arguing over, well, I'm not sure I hear this or whatever, but the more important thing, thanks for hanging with us, Miguel. We'll talk soon. The more important thing is, how do we get it to the point of making music as quickly as we can? And for me, these are the steps I take. So if anybody has questions, feel free to chime in, but I'm also going to take the last few minutes to kind of show a couple of other things that I like to do. These other things are very fun and really important to me, but not as important as the previous steps that I just laid out. The previous steps are like the real world, let's just get to beautiful melody and lyrical phrasing in time, okay? And I wouldn't expect any of you, maybe there's a couple of you out there, I'm not sure, I wouldn't expect anyone else to move through it as quickly as I have. I've been working on the approach of melodic triads. I knew my triads long before this. I've been playing triads for probably like 20 years now, but I've been specifically doing this type of stuff for about 3.5 years. And I've known the minor major, even though I hadn't warmed up today before going live. For those of you who were here from the beginning know that I literally hadn't even turned my amp on. I wanted to show you guys how I practice. So I came in totally unwarmed up, and I'm starting to feel a little loose now. Hey, thanks to Delmo. I'm looking forward to catching up on Skype and working with you again, going over some of the stuff that's frustrating at the moment. Thanks for hanging with us today. So I wouldn't expect it to happen in 45 minutes or an hour for any of you. That's why we do one a month, right? Because I think that's a really healthy pace. Now, if you are really already very advanced at guitar, some of you guys have figured out that you can go into the melodic progressions that I write out for tunes, and you can find, maybe not the secondary tension note, but you can find a quadratonic, a melodic triad and a quadratonic for any other given chord from those, and some of you have been increasing your pace of study with these, but I would definitely recommend, be patient. Imagine like the level of control I had over this minor major 9 that I was just showing you. Imagine if you had that for like 6 different chords, like a couple of different dominants, a major tonic, a minor tonic, and something else that's about 6. Think about how much control you would have and how much beautiful melody you could play in any situation. And if you're doing one per month, that's only 6 months. That's nothing. That's like that's a little bit longer than the length of a theory class in college. This is practical theory. It's like theory that we're immediately putting into musical situations. So we're not just studying it on paper. In fact, sometimes it doesn't match up with the things we study on paper, like the fact that our B note is the melodic do in this situation, even though we're playing over an E chord. Sean, yes, I could. The only issue is that I don't have a swing play along queued up, and it would take me a couple minutes to go through and find one that actually swings, and we're almost out of time, so I don't want to use the last couple minutes ignoring you guys and looking on YouTube. But maybe I'll try and find some time after we're done live, and I'll see if I can do that. Or we can just do it, together one-on-one sometime if you want to. But yeah, I mean, that's another great thing. I've been doing a lot of samba rhythms recently, but if we're playing jazz, we really should be able to do this stuff live. We really should be able to do this stuff with a swing groove, because that's uber important. Okay, so once I can actually play music, like melody with this stuff, then there's basically 2 different things that I move into, and I try and go back and forth and hit them both up a little bit. One of them is harmony, like how can I take this melodic triad idea and have more than just the shell and just the fully extended 6-note voicings. Both of those are great to know, right, to be able to see the shell voicings. But I personally am a big lover of, Bill Evans, that whole Brad Mehldau, that kind of sound. So I do come up with games for trying to take the melodic triad or the quadratonic or the pentatonic and extract more interesting, more pianistic style voicings. And we could do, like every day for 2 or 3 hours on Facebook Live together for a month, and I wouldn't be able to show you all of the different possibilities. I don't want to say they're infinite, but there's so many of them, and the trick to it is not to be overwhelmed by that, to just be happy that there's always going to be something to work on, and enjoy the process of just picking one of those things. So in the past, I told you guys about one where I would take the quadratonic and I'll just play it as a full chord, not as a scale, and I'll just remove the second to top note. So if I'm playing, I'll skip the second to top note. And then I'll find some kind of way to voice that all three at the same time. Okay, now if I put that over, like if I'm playing with a bass player who's playing this low E root note, okay, there's your minor major 9 being implied. It's not necessarily a full minor major 9, but it's starting from the first string. This is the 11th fret, 8th fret, 11th fret. So what is this? This is the major 7, the minor 3rd, and the 9. A nice little pianistic style cluster. We have a half step in here. Pretty cool sound. We could mess with this a bit. We could take any of these notes and drop it down an octave. Let's, not any, we should do the middle one. I mean, that's just beautiful. It's the same exact chord, but the middle note is dropped an octave, so it's like an open version of it. That's got a cluster. That's a big, warm, spread out sound. And you could do this with any note from the quadratonic, so let's try it on the B. So we're going to skip over the second to highest note. This note we're going to skip, so we end up with just a B major triad, which is a little bland. But if we go back and forth between that and the other voicing, this is the kind of stuff that I hear guys like Bill Evans and Brad Meldau and just great modern sort of post-bop piano players doing all the time, you know, just playing these like really beautiful little collections of notes. So what is that? That's the first voicing. The second voicing, which is just literally a B major triad. Notice that this is 2 of the 3 notes of B major triad, right? Every voicing we have is going to have at least 2 of the B major triad notes in it. Then I just played a little simple melody, and when I landed on B, I harmonized it with a B major triad. But if you put it over an E note, then insta harmony, right? There's like, you can't go wrong with this stuff. What would the next note sound like? Here's that. So I would skip the second to top note, that one, and we get what looks like an augmented triad, right? A B augmented. But we melodic triaders, we should know that it's not just an augmented triad, it's a B major triad with a tension flat 6. It wants to resolve. So here's F sharp. So we're going to skip that note, the 3rd, and we're going to add the 5th and the, the root and the flat 6. So anybody else just like annoyed at how cool all of these things sound? And there's really not much happening. We're just being a little creative with how we use this quadratonic. I love how your method gets us access to those types of sounds, never would have known. Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, don't forget, this is straight out of melodic minor. Right, I'm not arguing against the melodic minor scale. I know you guys always like make fun of me when I try and reiterate. I just don't want anybody to think that I'm attacking the great institutions of music, because people have been using scales and basic ideas, pedagogy ideas for hundreds of years to great, great ends. We're just being a little bit more specific about which notes inside of a scale we want to use, and we're deriving them not from studying the scale, we're deriving it from the harmony, what's happening in the harmony. So I'll probably screw this up because I haven't practiced a scale in like 3.5 years, but you know, we might do something with melodic minor. I'm just playing the diatonic triads, assuming I'm doing it right. Here's E minor, F sharp minor, what's next? G augmented. This is how long it's been for me that I like literally can barely do this. A major, B major, C sharp diminished. Anyways, I just don't care because I don't know about you. I mean, if you like that sound, by all means, like those are great sounds to play with. All we're doing is just reorganizing the way we play with sounds. But for me, I like to be like, that has a very generalized sort of modal scalar sound, which is great for certain styles and certain players. But I really like to find a similar sense of freedom and movability inside of just an individual tonality. Like, what does this chord really like want, you know, without steering away too far from it, because anything is possible. But like, for me, I just love the sound of that type of stuff. Let's just speed through maybe 1 or 2 more voicings and see what comes out of this. Legit, like, this is only level 1 of complexity. I mean, the depth to which we can dig with this type of harmonic playing is insane. Like, that's why I warned you not to get overwhelmed with this, and why I don't just start talking about all the different things that are possible. But what's important to remember is that all of these things are built on the foundation of just being able to see your B major triad. You gotta see it on the fretboard, right? Either in a position or on individual strings. Both are great. And then the ability to add one note to it and to be comfortable in that realm and to develop your ear around it. Those are all very, I guess those are like the holy trinity of melodic triads. Like, that's the foundation. And then once it makes sense in your ear and your fingers on the fretboard, you can play it musically. Then you can just make up little games. So if we take each one of these voicings that I just played, what was the last one? There it is. What if I take each one of those and take the middle note and drop it down an octave, right? That comes straight out of triads. We have closed triads and we have open triads. So closed triad is when you play it in one position, one octave. So here's B major. Now, if you've ever like really studied classical theory and triads, we know that we have open triads, which is when we just drop the middle note down an octave. So instead of, we get, and it gives us a whole different emotional feel to it, even though it's the same notes. Okay. So what if we take that same idea and apply it to these three note voicings that I just showed you guys? So instead of that, we get what was the next one? There's a B note. Passing notes in between all these to make it sound a little bit more like we're moving through something. So maybe sections that begin opening up, but it's all built on the same basic fundamentals. Here's another concept, one that I was playing around with a little bit the other day. I just reminded myself of it when I was working on this. This is how I think when I'm practicing. I get my basics down and then I just come up with a game and I just play that game for a while. Okay, that style of practice is kind of just the way I've always worked, but Stefan was very much like that. It was never about memorizing a bunch of stuff. It was about how quickly can we think on our feet. And you develop that by just coming up with something to challenge yourself, making sure the fundamentals are there, and then just learning to challenge yourself and work your way through it. And I've heard Herbie Hancock talk about the same thing, that for him practice is not about memorizing riffs or anything like that. It's about teaching his mind to learn to capture an idea in real time, in the moment when he's playing with groups, to capture that idea and be playful with it, right? And be patient and mess around with it. So this is how I like to, one of the ways I like to do that. So here's one last thing. We didn't get to talk about like scalar variations, but this gives you hopefully some ideas. One last thing, and then I'll check in on the questions and then we'll wrap up. So I was messing around with this yesterday, 2 days ago, something like that. Descending down the melodic triad as an open triad. So it's just a B triad. And then playing the G note. And then landing on the E. I think I was doing this with a tempo, so with a rhythm yesterday. So let me put this samba rhythm back on. Anytime I find something cool that I like, I try and push myself to be able to, in real time, even if I face plant and fail miserably, I try not to like pre-write everything out on paper. I try and find a sound I like and then just immediately jump into applying it through the circle of fifths or some type of cycle. That's impossible to do at beginner stages, very challenging at intermediate stages, and a good challenge, a healthy challenge when you get more into the upper, intermediate, and advanced stages. So you have to be very self-aware with that, but it's the same idea. B major triad, and you can do that with any of the different, come on Brian, you can do it, any of the different inversions of the triad. So it's like a double slash chord. I might not be playing the E note, but there's a bass player underneath me playing it. Okay. Woo! That was a lot. I hope it was insightful to you guys in terms of just showing you how I work on this stuff. This is the type of stuff that I'm always encouraging everyone to do before you try and play full tunes. The full tunes are fun And the idea is to show you that even the melody of standards, of any standard, of any tune, even outside of jazz, can be analyzed and understood with melodic triads. And once we do that, and I do really play this way very often, if not most of the time, once we do that, we can then improvise with those melodic triads and those quadratonics to be inside the sort of colors that the melody of the tune has, rather than running chord changes. But really, the real value that I want to share with you guys and help you guys understand, the real value comes in knowing your basic triads, having the control to add one note to it, and be able to manipulate the type of tension that creates, and then studying an individual, a singular tonality, right? Like the minor, major, nine. Like really get to own it, get to understand it, be able to make music inside of it. And then the next step after all these different things, maybe even before some of these things, once you are comfortable with it, then maybe throw a 5 chord before it, right? Treat it as just like a minor 5-1. If you guys were with us, I can't remember if it was last month, 2 months ago, we did the 7, sharp 9, sharp 7, sharp 9, sharp 5. That was just straight out of the quadratonic. That's what am I playing? I'm playing a B7, sharp 9, sharp 5. So I'm working with a G major triad, tension flat 6. So here's the D, E flat, G, and then I just resolved down to one of the notes of B major triad. So then it becomes a game of, if you can see both of them and understand how the tension and resolution works inside of them, then it just kind of becomes like being playful about voice leading and learning to see and hear. Right, that's the 5 and the 1. I'm just looking at the quadratonics alone. Okay. We got to wrap up. We're a little over. Let me see what people are talking about on here. All right. Paul, so for any melodic triad with tension note X, you have 4 possibilities: 1 3 5, 1 3 X, 3 5 X, 1 5 X. I don't know. I'd have to sit and think about that for a bit because I'm not used to thinking of it that way, Paul. There are different variations. I would think that there's different places, like the X could fall, like there's different orderings, like instead of 1 3 X, you also have 1 X 3 and X 1 3 or X 3 1, right? I think there's probably a lot of different, maybe close to, not, I don't want to say infinite because it's not infinite, but when you're dealing with the 4 notes, there's different orders. You can also place them in different octaves. You can also, if any of you guys play with other instruments, like if you have a sax player, dude, give the sax player the top note and you take the bottom 2 notes of any of these 3-note voicings, and it's like instant gorgeous harmony, like beautiful arranging. Put the bass player on the root note, and then you guys take the 3 notes, or if you have a 3-piece horn section, right? If you listen to my record, This City, you'll hear a lot of this. If I have like a moving melody line, I'll figure out what my melodic triad is, what my quadratonic is, and I'll take like the 3 woodwinds and I'll just literally, like, that's how I arranged a lot of the parts in it, is I'll just take these types of organizational ideas and just write it out for the horn section. What's so cool about this as opposed to standard inversions is that we're inverting 4 notes but only using 3 at a time. So every time we move to a new inversion, 1 note disappears, 1 pitch disappears, and 1 new pitch appears. So it becomes a lot more interesting to the ear, right? Versus this, like all of them sound the exact same because it's the same 3 pitches. The same problem happens when we do like drop 2, like if we're talking about, you know, like a B major 7 chord. Even if we love these sounds, first of all, I think they change emotionally with each inversion, which I personally don't like, at least not to rely on as like the meat of my music. But more importantly, it's just very homogeneous. All of them sound the same, right? In terms of the notes, there's no new notes, there's no new pitches. It's just the same 4 pitches. We drop it in a bag and we shake it up and they just come out in a different order. But when we do something like this, where we have the ability to take 1 note out and every time we invert, a different pitch disappears or reappears, we get some really interesting stuff. In terms of like that's so clean sounding, that's not. Right, each one of these, there's like something new popping up, which is just an interesting thing for the ear. All right, Jim, you gotta run. Cool. Looks like you may have put that up a few minutes ago. Okay, we didn't get to talk about like the scalar type variations I do. I mentioned that there was 2 different things I'd work on. One is harmony and one is like melody and sequences and patterns, but I've talked about some of that in the past. For those of you in the private community, I think there's one of the bonus lessons is on that. I call them speed demons. It's like little games I play to develop muscle memory and speed with quadratonics and pentatonics and hexatonics using like scalar type thinking. That type of stuff can be a lot of fun. Although I always remind everybody, for me, it's secondary to tension resolution, developing the ear, being able to play and improvise melody, right? Just lyrical, beautiful melody. That's, for me, my main priority. Anyways, that's about it. I don't see any other questions. Thank you guys so much for hanging. Huge thank you to the private community. Absolutely love having you guys. It's so fun hanging out in the underground and talking about stuff, and really appreciate your input on the direction you want us to head. I'm trying to kind of let you guys steer the ship, and I just sort of provide whatever it is I can to be as helpful as possible. So big thank you to you guys. Huge thank you to everybody and anybody who has been contributing to helping me make sure I can afford to continue putting out the free resources, because that's like something I'm very passionate about. I want to be able to help as many people as possible. I know musicians and music students are not always super well off, so it means a lot to me to have you guys helping me being able to make sure that I can keep a lot of this stuff free for those who, you know, need the free resources. And then just a big thanks to everybody for hanging out on their Saturday. I'm gonna run. I'm actually about to teach a Skype lesson in just a little bit. So thank you again, and I will see you guys. I think our next one of these is next week. So looking forward to hearing more videos in the group. If anything here inspired you, you know, turn on your computer or your phone and videotape yourself, just shedding. I know it can seem a little dull, but just like practice some stuff in front of a camera and share it with us. It's not only helpful to the group, but it's a good way to kind of keep yourself disciplined to make sure you're doing the work and to get feedback, because sometimes our own ears can trick us a little bit. So it's helpful to get other people's ears and feedback, because they might notice things that sound really good that we thought sounded bad, or vice versa. Okay, that's it. Happy practicing. I'll see you guys next week.